Lin Feng couldn't stand it for one more second. The endless overtime and soul-crushing tasks were finally pushing him to the edge. Suddenly, a company-wide email flashed on his screen. It was an ultimatum: accept a pay cut or take a severance package and get out. While others panicked, Lin Feng didn't hesitate. He grabbed his things, took the $20,000 in compensation, and walked out a free man. He headed back to his apartment, a valuable piece of real estate he'd inherited after his village was redeveloped. With no meetings and no boss to answer to, he finally had time for himself. He decided to boot up a game he hadn't touched in years. It was a classic tower defense battle called the Star Sea Swarm. He felt a surge of nostalgia as he prepared to defend the human base from alien invaders. Hours slipped away as he lost himself in the strategy. Before he knew it, the clock hit 9 in the evening. A sudden chime from a doorbell broke his concentration. He pulled off his headphones, wondering who could be visiting so late. Standing there was Zhang Yuro, his neighbor and distant relative. She looked radiant, her athletic figure accentuated by her workout gear. She asked if he'd eaten yet, holding up a pot of hot soup. Despite being in her 30s, she had the energy of someone much younger. Without waiting for an answer, she walked right in. Lin Feng couldn't help but notice how her clothes clung to her curves as she moved. She served him a bowl of fragrant chicken soup, insisting that he eat. The aroma was incredible, instantly making his stomach growl. Lin Feng noticed the soup was packed with expensive medicinal herbs. It seemed like a meal meant for someone needing a serious health boost. He asked if her husband, Lin Yoji, was back yet. Zhang Yuro sighed, her expression turning a bit weary. She explained that he was out entertaining clients again. He was desperately trying to chase down payments that were months overdue. Lin Feng nodded, knowing the story. His neighbor had become a successful contractor, but wealth seemed to keep him away from home. They had been married for 10 years, yet they still didn't have any children. It was a sensitive subject in their household. Lin Feng suggested that maybe a child would help her husband settle down. He didn't realize he had just touched a nerve. She stammered that her husband had worn himself out working too hard. His health wasn't what it used to be, and he was still recovering. Lin Feng looked at the fortifying herbs in his soup and realized why she was making such meals. He quickly tried to change the subject. She asked why he was home so early and if he'd missed work. Lin Feng admitted he had quit his job. She worried about his future, asking how he'd ever get married without a stable career. She even offered to have her husband find him a spot on a construction crew. Lin Feng quickly declined, lying that he already had a new job lined up. He just wanted to enjoy his freedom for a few more days. He reminded her about the solar eclipse scheduled for the next morning. He warned her not to look directly at it during her run. Zhang Yuro nodded, but her mind seemed 1,000 miles away. She stared blankly at him for several long seconds. She snapped back to reality with a visible shiver. The sweat from her run was cooling down, and a chill was setting in. She told him to stop eating instant noodles and to come over for dinner anytime. Then, she slipped out and headed back to her own apartment. Lin Feng sighed, thinking about how such a caring woman was often left all alone. Soon, exhaustion took over, and he fell into a deep sleep. Across the hall, Zhang Yuro wasn't so lucky. A sudden fever had taken hold, leaving her restless and shivering all through the night. Next morning, Lin Feng woke up at dawn out of habit. It took him a moment to realize he didn't have to rush to the office anymore. By 7:30, the sky outside began to dim unnaturally. He checked his phone, noticing the signal was nearly gone. The eclipse wasn't supposed to start for another half hour. Something was very wrong with the timing. He looked out the window and froze. The sun had turned into a black void, bleeding a terrifying crimson light across the sky. His eyes stung sharply, forcing him to look away. When he opened them, strange digital symbols began to swim in his vision. A loud crash from below drew his attention. A luxury car had just slammed into a pillar in the driveway. He recognized it instantly. It was Lin Yoji's new Mercedes. Panic flared in his chest as he bolted for the stairs. He yanked the door open to find a horrific scene. Lin Yoji was drenched in blood, his face ashen and his breath ragged. With his final strength, Lin Yoji grabbed Lin Feng's arm. He looked like a man who had seen the end of the world. He pressed a heavy, blood-stained pistol into Lin Feng's hand. He begged him to take care of his wife and get her out of there. His last words were a warning about bugs, so many bugs. Then his body went limp and the light left his eyes. A scream from the back seat made Lin Feng jump. A young woman in a business suit was cowering there, paralyzed with terror. Before he could ask who she was, more screams erupted from the street. Giant, monstrous red beetles were swarming the complex. Creatures were massive and fast, tearing into anyone they could find. The peaceful morning had turned into a slaughterhouse. Adrenaline surged through Lin Feng's veins. He didn't wait around to be the next victim. He turned and ran for the safety of the building. He slammed the iron gate shut and locked it just in time. He stood there panting, the cold weight of the pistol still in his hand. As he looked at the gun, the strange symbols in his vision suddenly aligned. A digital display appeared, showing the weapon stats. It was just like the tower defense game he'd been playing. The gun was labeled as an inferior weapon, but it was the only thing between him and death. The system told him that hitting targets would grant upgrade points. He realized that the world had just changed into something he understood. The woman beside him finally found her voice. She looked at him with trembling eyes, trying to gauge who he was. She asked if he was Lin Feng, noting that the man who just died told him to take care of her. She was trying to secure her own safety, and she said something that made his heart stop. She claimed that she was his sister-in-law. Lin Feng was stunned. If this woman was the sister-in-law, then who was the woman waiting for him upstairs? Lin Feng didn't have time for sentimental titles. He turned his cold gaze toward the woman standing behind him. She looked barely out of college, her tear-streaked face revealing a youthful naivety. Even in this nightmare, it was clear she was a striking beauty. She stood tall in her professional attire, but her trembling legs betrayed her fear. Lin Feng, however, wasn't interested in her looks. He needed information, and he needed it now. His sharp glare was enough to silence her before she could say another word. He wiped the fresh blood from the pistol, checking if she could see the system text floating above it. She didn't react to the glowing words. He ordered her to move, giving her exactly 1 minute to get her story straight. They began their ascent into the old residential building. Lin Feng tried to call for help, but every emergency line was dead. The silence from the outside world was deafening. Outside, the horror was escalating as giant red-armored beetles swarmed the complex. They were hunting anything that moved. Screams echoed through the air as the monsters tore through unsuspecting victims. Chen Yinyan's legs shook so hard she could barely stay upright. They reached the 3rd floor, where Lin Feng lived directly across from his sister-in-law, Zhang Yuro. He kept his eyes fixed on the floating text of his weapon. The moment they stepped inside, he slammed the door shut. The safety of his home felt fragile against the chaos outside. Chen Yinyan collapsed onto the floor, her strength finally failing her. She huddled into a ball, trying to shut out the terror. Lin Feng ignored her breakdown and headed straight for the kitchen. He grabbed a rusty cleaver and a small fruit knife, testing their weight. The cleaver shimmered with system data, labeling it as a low-grade weapon. It was worn out, but it offered a bonus for infection damage. The fruit knife, however, showed nothing at all. Its quality was simply too low to be recognized by the system. He tossed the cleaver aside and focused on the gun. He needed to bind his strongest weapon immediately. He thought the word bind in his mind, and the system began retrieving data. The pistol was now officially his primary equipment. The process finalized, he turned his attention back to the woman. It was time for her to talk. She introduced herself as Chen Yinyan, his brother's assistant. Her voice shook as she began to recount the nightmare at the construction site. They were supervising a foundation when the ground opened up. Countless giant bugs crawled out of the deep pit, attacking everyone in sight. Lin Yoji had fought them off to save her, but he was bitten in the process. He had used his last strength to drive her back to the apartment. Lin Feng barely acknowledged her apology for the earlier misunderstanding. He was focused on the news headlines flickering on his phone. The world was falling apart. Coastal cities were under attack by unknown life forms. The government was calling for a mass evacuation inland. The signal was too weak to load images, leaving him with only fragments of information. He sighed and pocketed the device. Chen Yinyan asked if he was related to the manager. He nodded, his mind elsewhere. He asked her about the solar eclipse. It seemed the monsters appeared the moment the sun vanished. She confirmed the timing, but she couldn't see the floating labels. It seemed Lin Feng was the only one granted this strange system. Suddenly, his vision flared with new data. The item upgrade system was finally fully operational. His character stats appeared before him, showing his life value and physical strength. He felt a strange energy beginning to stir. A warm current flowed from the pistol into his body, surging through his veins. His level increased instantly, and his muscles felt tighter. Finding the equipment had triggered a transformation. As the weapon grew stronger, so did he. He realized that upgrading his gear was the key to his own survival. This was a massive advantage in a world gone mad. He tested his identification skill on Chun Yin. The system labeled her as a frail human female with decent intelligence. He stood up, feeling lighter and more capable than ever. But before he could plan his next move, a scream pierced the air. It was Jean Euro's voice. He rushed to the door and peered through the peephole. Across the hall, a massive red beetle was forcing its way into Euro's apartment. She was desperately trying to slam the door shut. Lin Feng didn't hesitate. He opened his door just enough to aim the pistol at the creature's exposed side. He clicked off the safety and pulled the trigger in one smooth motion. The gunshot echoed loudly in the narrow hallway. The system identified the beast as a red-armored beetle. It was a low-tier worker, but its defense was high. The first bullet shattered the beetle's hind leg. It lurched to the side, losing its grip on the doorframe. Seeing her chance, Jean Euro slammed her door shut and locked it. Now, the monster turned its full attention to Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't wait for it to charge. He fired 3 consecutive shots directly into the monster's head. At such close range, the bullet shredded its compound eyes and skull. The beetle let out a high-pitched shriek of agony. Blinded and broken, the creature retreated, fleeing down the stairs. Lin Feng fired one last shot, but bounced off the thick back armor. The notification confirmed the kill count. Dealing critical damage to the head had doubled his upgrade points. His pistol was ready for an upgrade, but he only had 1 bullet left. He had to be smart about his next move. He stepped into the hall and called out to his sister-in-law. The hallway was silent except for the sound of his own breathing. He picked up the severed beetle leg, a grim trophy of his first victory. Chun Yin watched him from the shadows, her eyes wide with shock. Lin Feng stepped into room 302, finally reaching safety. But the sight waiting for him was anything but peaceful. Zhang Euro stood there in a sheer nightgown, her silhouette faint in the shadows. Before he could even speak, she rushed forward and grabbed his hands. She was frantic, her voice trembling as she asked what was happening outside. She had seen her husband's car downstairs, but he wasn't answering his phone. Lin Feng took a deep breath and gripped her shoulders firmly. He needed her to calm down before he delivered the crushing news. To him, she was more than just a sister-in-law. She was family. He had risked everything to reach her, but the hardest part was yet to come. Under his steady gaze, she felt a flicker of safety. She waited, breathless, for the answer she dreaded. He told her the truth with a heavy heart. Her husband was gone, killed by the very monsters that were swarming the city. He warned her that there was no time for grief. If they didn't find weapons and a way to escape soon, they would all be next. He mentioned his brother's final wish, to get her out of here safely. But before he could finish, her face flushed a deep red. Zhang Euro suddenly fainted, her strength failing her. Lin Feng's reflexes were sharp, and he caught her just before she hit the floor. As he lifted her, he felt the intense heat radiating from her body. It wasn't just the shock. She was burning up with a fever. He laid her on the sofa and checked her temperature. This was the worst possible timing for her to fall ill. He activated his identification skill to see what was really going on. The data that appeared was unexpected. She wasn't just sick, she was in a state of upgrading. Despite being level 0, the system noted she had massive potential. A wave of relief washed over him. If she leveled up and became stronger, their chances of surviving this nightmare would skyrocket. He turned to Chun Yin, his voice low and commanding. He told her to stop standing around and get some water and a cold towel. Chun Yin snapped into action, knowing better than to argue. She realized that in this new world, the man with the gun made the rules. While she tended to the fever, Lin Feng headed into the study. He knew this apartment well and had a specific target in mind. He searched through the cabinets until he found a hidden compartment. Inside, he hit the jackpot: a fresh magazine, a leather holster, and a box of loose ammunition. He quickly counted 20 rounds remaining. He loaded the magazines with practiced efficiency. Now, he had one full 12-round clip and another with 9 rounds ready to go. He secured the holster to his waist, feeling the weight of the pistol against his hip. It was a comforting weight in a world gone mad. When he returned to the living room, Zhang Yuro was finally stirring. She looked pale, but her consciousness was returning. Chen Yinyan approached with fever reducers and the last of the bottled water. She noted that the utility services were already starting to fail. He helped her drink the entire bottle, watching as the color slowly returned to her face. She was still weak, but she was pushing herself to sit upright. Her sweat-soaked nightgown left little to the imagination. Lin Feng cleared his throat and told her she should go change her clothes. Realizing her appearance, she blushed deeply and hurried toward the bedroom. The silence that followed was broken by a sharp chime. A message had arrived on her phone from a man named Zhang Er. It was a lifeline. Rescue helicopters were coming to the nearby university. It had 24 hours to cover 3 kilometers. This wasn't just her way out. It was his chance to escape this hell too. While he waited, he examined the beetle leg he had harvested. It was like a giant, armored crab limb, designed for pure destruction. He studied its biology, noting the retractable strikers and the thick red armor. To kill these things, he needed to be precise. Zhang Yuro returned, now dressed in practical athletic gear. She looked energized, her ponytail swaying as she walked. He handed her the phone and asked about Zhang Er. Her eyes lit up at the rescue news, but dimmed when he mentioned the name. It was her father, a man who had never approved of her marriage. Despite their strained past, he was still trying to save her. Lin Feng checked her stats again and was stunned. Her upgrade was complete. She was now level 1, with a physique higher than his own. At that same moment, his pistol finished its own upgrade. The ordinary weapon was transforming into something far more lethal. The damage had increased, and a new attribute had appeared: bullet recovery. He would now generate 1 bullet every hour. It changed everything. He no longer had to worry about running out of ammo during a long fight. He snapped back to reality and told them the plan. They would rest, gear up, and then take out the injured beetle outside. Zhang Yuro agreed, finding his confidence contagious. She turned her attention to the other woman in the room. Chun Yinyan introduced herself as an accountant, claiming she had escaped with Lin's brother. She painted a picture of a devoted husband. Zhang Yuro was moved by the lies, thanking her and offering her a change of clothes. She didn't suspect a thing. As she was led toward the bedroom, Chun Yinyan shot a desperate look back at Lin Feng. She was terrified he would expose her deception. Lin Feng watched them go, a slow smile playing on his lips. He wondered if he should reveal the truth or let the drama unfold. Lin Feng watched Chun Yinyan's long legs, wrapped in dark stockings, vanish into the bedroom. He knew he had to keep his head clear and avoid any unnecessary drama. His priority was simple: farm the lone red-armored beetles for points and prepare for the trek to the university. Every second spent idling was a second wasted. Chun Yinyan wasn't a warrior, but she was obedient and didn't scream at every shadow. That alone made her more useful than most survivors he'd encountered. His mind, she was a resource, a potential distraction to buy him and his sister-in-law time if things turned deadly. Survival in this new world required a cold heart. As the others changed, he gripped his pistol, feeling a surge of warmth flowing from the weapon into his arm. This time, the sensation was far more intense than before. His heart hammered against his ribs, and his breath grew heavy as his body absorbed the energy. The power was rewriting his very cells. A minute later, the heat dissipated, leaving him feeling sharper and more grounded. He could feel the difference in his muscles and his mind. A blue interface flickered into existence before his eyes. He had reached level 2, and the numbers confirmed his growth. His life value and physique had jumped significantly, while his spirit saw a steady increase. Every point was a shield against the coming tide of monsters. He smiled, knowing that using actual upgrade points yielded far better results than simple binding. This was the edge he needed to stay alive. While the women were busy, Lin Feng headed into the kitchen to find more tools. He scanned the neatly organized rack of knives, looking for something lethal. He pulled out a heavy bone-chopping saber, its wide blade designed for force. It was a common white quality item, but it packed a punch. Unfortunately, the system informed him that it couldn't be bound as personal equipment yet. To upgrade this blade, he'd have to use it in actual combat. He realized he likely needed to break the level 9 cap before he could bind a second item. For now, the pistol remained his primary soul-bound weapon. He decided the knives would be better served in the hands of the women. They needed a way to fight back if a beetle managed to get close. Just as he returned to the living room, Zhang Yuro and Chun Yinyan emerged. They looked much more prepared for the chaos outside. Chun Yinyan had swapped her office wear for casual gear, though she still towered over Yuro. Even in borrowed clothes, her model-like stature was hard to ignore. Because Yuro's pants were a bit short, the black stockings Yin-Yan had kept on were visible at her ankles. It was a strange, mismatched look for the apocalypse. Lin Feng couldn't help but offer a snarky comment about her choice of footwear. He warned her that if those stockings caused her to slip, he wouldn't be saving her. She flushed red, explaining that the shoes were too tight for regular socks. The stockings were the only way she could squeeze her feet inside. To prove they were secure, she jumped up and down a few times. Lin Feng just nodded, refocusing on the task at hand. He asked his sister-in-law if there were any longer weapons in the house. Close quarters combat with the beetles was a gamble he didn't want to take. Zhang Yuro's brow furrowed as she thought, then her eyes lit up. She quickly turned and ran back toward her bedroom, beckoning them to follow. The bedroom was a mess of discarded clothes and private items. Lin Feng kept his eyes on Yuro as she knelt beside the nightstand. She pushed the nightstand aside and revealed a hidden compartment built into the bed frame. Inside lay two long, lethal-looking sabers. The blades were over 1 meter long, forged from tempered rebar. They were crude, heavy, and perfect for keeping monsters at a distance. Lin Feng scanned them, and the data appeared in his vision. These crude weapons actually dealt the same damage as his level 2 pistol. He hefted one, finding it weighed at least 3 kilograms. Even with his boosted strength, swinging it with one hand felt clumsy and strenuous. But it wasn't just the swords that caught his eye. The metal drawer they had been stored in was a custom-made sheet metal cabinet door. It was the perfect size to serve as a makeshift shield. He lacked defensive gear, and this piece of metal could be a literal lifesaver. The metal was thin, but he could reinforce it with wood from the wardrobe. It would be a crude shield, but far better than nothing at all. He immediately began dismantling the furniture to fashion his protection. He told the women to start gathering food and medicine while he worked. Zhang Yuro chose a shorter blade that suited her endurance-based strength. She felt comfortable with the weight and was ready to contribute. Realizing they hadn't eaten, she headed to the kitchen to prepare a final meal before they left. The tension in the air was palpable. Chun Yinyan tried to lift the long saber, but it was far too heavy for her. She lacked the physical power to wield such a massive hunk of steel. Defeated by the sword, she settled for a small dagger. She then turned her attention to Lin Feng, who was still focused on his shield. She quietly closed the bedroom door, cutting them off from the rest of the apartment. She had a different kind of survival strategy in mind. She walked over and squatted beside him, watching him work with a faint, lingering smile. Lin Feng didn't even look up at first. Lin Feng eventually stopped and asked her why she wasn't packing supplies. He had no patience for idle hands during a crisis. She unzipped her jacket, claiming she was hot from the effort. Her eyes were fixed on him, searching for any sign of interest. Lin Feng noted her slender frame, but remained largely unimpressed. He was a man of action, and survival always came before desire. He asked him to teach her how to use the knife, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. She was testing her charm on the young man. He brushed her off, telling her he didn't know anything about knife drills. He was being intentionally dense, frustrating her efforts. Chun Yinyan felt a surge of panic. Had she really lost her beauty? She knew that without his protection, she was as good as dead. He decided to go all in, leaning close to his ear until he could smell her floral scent. She was desperate to secure her place by his side. She whispered a promise to do anything he wanted if he got her out safely. It was a classic trade, beauty for protection. She punctuated her offer with a bold gesture, her heart racing. She waited for his reaction, hoping her gamble would pay off. Lin Feng turned his head to meet her gaze, a slow smile spreading across his face. He asked her if she was truly willing to do whatever it took. Lin Feng didn't have time for games. He placed the cold steel of a dagger into Chun Yinyan's hand, his expression turning grim. He needed a partner he could trust, not a burden who would slow him down. He asked her point-blank if she was ready to kill. Chun Yin swallowed hard, instinctively shrinking away from his piercing gaze. The reality of their situation was finally sinking in. Lin Feng stood up abruptly, causing her to tumble backward in a panic. He pointed the dagger toward her chest, his voice low and demanding. He wanted to know the truth about her relationship with his late brother. How long had she really been with Lin Yoji? She stammered out an explanation, claiming they were never actually intimate. She insisted he only hired her for business dinners and had issues in private. Lin Feng didn't care about her excuses. He told her she didn't need to convince him. She needed to convince his sister-in-law. He tossed the weapon back to her and walked out. Survival was the only thing that mattered now, and he had a more important person to check on. He knew Zhang Yuro wasn't a fool. She had likely seen through her husband's character long ago, even if she stayed silent. In the kitchen, he found his sister-in-law quietly frying eggs. She looked fragile, her eyes red from crying, but she forced a smile when she saw him. She told him breakfast would be ready soon. Just some leftovers she was reheating. Lin Feng took a deep breath, deciding it was time for a hard conversation. He told her not to be too heartbroken over a man like Lin Yoji. In this new world, they couldn't afford to be weighed down by grief. He urged her to be honest about how she felt regarding Chun Yin. If there was friction in the team, it would get them killed out there. He even offered to leave the other woman behind if Zhang Yuro didn't want her along. They had already done enough for her. That was the breaking point. Zhang Yuro couldn't hold it back anymore and collapsed into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He held her firmly, knowing that sometimes a silent hug is worth more than 1,000 words. He let her vent all the pain she'd been carrying. The omelet in the pan began to burn, but neither of them noticed. The emotional release was far more important than a ruined breakfast. Suddenly, she looked up and kissed him with a desperate intensity. It was a side of his gentle sister-in-law he had never seen before. Lin Feng froze, completely caught off guard by her boldness. This was the woman who was always so proper and reserved. He slowly reached out and clicked the stove off, letting the moment stretch on. For a brief second, the world outside didn't exist. When they finally separated, Lin Feng was tongue-tied and flustered. He could barely manage to stutter out her title. He silenced him with a finger to his lips. She thanked him for risking his life to save her, her eyes filled with newfound affection. She admitted she had seen through her husband long ago. Those tears weren't for him, but for the years she had wasted on a scumbag. She agreed to take Chun Yin with them, feeling a sense of pity for the woman. As long as she followed orders, she could stay. Then, she made a request that changed everything. She told him not to call her sister-in-law anymore. She wanted him to call her big sister or Sister Yuro instead. The hidden meaning behind her words wasn't lost on him. Lin Feng felt a surge of excitement as he agreed. The bond between them had shifted into something much deeper. He told him to go finish packing and not to worry about her. A genuine smile, the first in a long time, lit up her face. As he left, he heard a soft click from the bedroom door. He knew Chun Yin had been eavesdropping, and it made him smile. He went to the balcony to find some steel wire. He needed to reinforce his shield if they were going to survive the journey ahead. He entered the bedroom. Chun Yin tried to turn on the charm. She was furious that Zhang Yuro had moved faster than her. She grabbed his hand and asked if she could be his girlfriend. She was desperate to secure her place by his side. Lin Feng didn't hesitate. He pulled his hand away and gave her a flat no, his focus remaining on his gear. She grew angry, demanding to know if she wasn't pretty enough. She compared herself to Yuro, trying to find some leverage. He answered honestly, telling her he didn't date dead people. First, she had to prove she could actually survive the city. He warned her that those insects wouldn't care about her beauty. In fact, her expensive perfume might just lead them straight to her. She stood there in stunned silence as he finished reinforcing his shield. He was a man driven by logic, not lust. Breakfast was a quiet affair. Lin Feng ate the most, fueling his body for the coming battle. After eating, he watched the complex from the balcony. A dozen red-armored beetles were busy devouring corpses in the courtyard. The long, unnatural eclipse was finally ending. 3 hours of darkness had passed, and the world was finally being bathed in light again. He checked his weapon, confirming he had 24 rounds ready. It was more than enough to handle a few stray beetles. He looked back at the two women, who were gripping their knives with trembling hands. He offered them a final word of reassurance. He explained that they had to work together. If he didn't kill the insect with his first shots, they had to step in and finish it. He stepped out into the corridor first, checking the walls and ceiling for any hidden predators. The air was thick with the scent of iron. He struck the railing with his shield, creating a loud thud to lure any nearby insects. He wanted to fight on his own terms. When nothing answered, they moved down to the second floor. A trail of yellowish blood led them toward a half-open door. Inside apartment 201, a beetle was feasting on a neighbor. It was the same one Lin Feng had injured earlier, and it was already healing. The creature's recovery speed was terrifying. It had already regained its strength by consuming human flesh. Lin Feng didn't give it a chance to lunge. He raised his gun and fired 3 shots directly into its shattered head. 3 bullets ripped through the air in quick succession, slamming into the red-armored beetle. The LV-2 pistol delivers a devastating blow, with 1 shot piercing the creature's head for a critical hit. Half its brain is blown away instantly. The other 2 rounds tear through its forelimb and mouth, finishing the monster off for good. Lin Feng exhales, knowing his quick decision saved him. If he'd fired just once, the creature might have escaped back into the shadows. He runs an identification scan on the twitching mass. The red-armored beetle is officially dead. Shield raised, Lin Feng cautiously approaches the fallen beast. The residential complex is eerily quiet now, the echo of his gunshots still ringing in his ears. He reaches the door of apartment 201 and peers inside. Just as he feared, another beetle is already scurrying toward the noise. The creature pounces, its hook-like mouth parts slamming into his shield. The impact tears through the metal surface, denting the heavy wood beneath. Lin Feng prepares to fire, but stops when he sees thick antennae poking through the window. A whole swarm is being drawn to the sound of the gunshots. He realizes he's outnumbered and needs to move fast. He grabs the dead beetle's legs and drags its heavy corpse into the hallway. Slams the door shut just as the next monster lunges. The heavy bang echoes through the corridor, signaling a narrow escape from the swarm. Lin Feng leans against the wall, his hands shaking from the adrenaline. 1 second slower, and he would have been overrun by the monsters. He catches his breath and looks at his battered shield. He signals the 2 women to follow him down to the first floor. The main entrance, several beetles are already waiting. Going out now would be a death sentence. They have to wait for the creatures to clear out. Lin Feng decides it's time to secure the rest of the building instead. He goes door to door, ordering everyone to lock up and draw their curtains. He tells them the hallway is clear for now. Most apartments are empty or the residents are away at work. Only 4 households respond to his urgent warning. It's mostly women and the elderly left behind. Lin Feng knows he can't count on them for help, only that they stay out of the way. The survivors realize the stairwell is actually safer than their rooms. The metal doors and barred windows offer a layer of protection the glass panes don't. Soon, a small group of survivors gathers in the stairwell. 2 middle-aged women, a younger girl, and 3 seniors huddle together in the shadows, drag food and bedding to the landing between the floors. A makeshift camp begins to form in the cold concrete space. As they pass apartment 201, one middle-aged woman sees the carnage and lets out a piercing scream. Chun Yinyin immediately turns on her with a sharp hiss. She warns the woman to shut up before she attracts every insect in the city. The tension in the air is thick enough to cut with a knife. Chun Yinyin is shaking too, but she hides it behind a mask of irritation. She knows one mistake could get them all killed. The woman falls silent, terrified by the dagger in Chun Yinyin's hand. But the noise has already drawn the others from upstairs. The smell of blood from the dead woman in the hallway begins to fill the air. It's a metallic, heavy scent that no one can ignore. The newcomers retch at the sight of the mangled body. They cover their mouths, unable to look directly at the gory remains. Most have seen the chaos outside their windows, so they don't lose their minds. But leaving a corpse in the hallway feels wrong to everyone. The woman who screamed earlier sees the crowd and finds her courage again. She demands to know what Lin Feng is going to do about the body. She tells them to just throw the remains outside. Chun Yinyin glares at her, asking if she wants to volunteer for that suicide mission. The woman's face twists in anger as she puts her hands on her hips. She points at Lin Feng, demanding he use his gun to protect them. She calls him a peace officer and reminds him they are all taxpayers. The crowd behind her starts to murmur, demanding their rights. They believe the gun makes him a servant of the state. But Lin Feng has absolutely no patience left for their entitlement. He slowly raises his pistol and points it directly at the group. The sudden silence is deafening as they stare down the dark barrel. He tells them plainly that he isn't an officer and owes them nothing. His warning was a gift, and they shouldn't push their luck. Get back upstairs, he growls, his voice cold and final. The crowd scatters, realizing he isn't bluffing about using force. Lin Feng turns back to the beetle and grabs its thick, spiny legs. Despite its massive size, the creature is surprisingly light. Weighs about as much as a grown man, which is easy for him to handle now. He signals the women to help him move the rest. Zhang Yuro hesitates, her face pale as she looks at the insect's mouth. The sight of the victim's remains still clinging to it makes her stomach turn. Chen Yinyin doesn't wait, grabbing the creature's head without a word. She leaves the cleaner tail end for Zhang Yuro to carry. Zhang Yuro suppresses her fear and grabs the hind legs. Together, they follow Lin Feng back toward the safety of his apartment. Lin Feng leads the way, keeping his eyes on the survivors as they pass. He knows it's always better to be cautious around desperate people. Once inside apartment 302, they drop the heavy carcass on the floor. The two women lean against the wall, finally breathing again. Zhang Yuro rushes to the bathroom to scrub the slime off her skin. Chen Yinyin stays behind, watching Lin Feng grab a heavy bone-chopping saber. Lin Feng notices her curiosity and asks if she's still scared. She replies that she's only afraid of dying, not a dead bug. She pulls out her own dagger, ready to learn how to take these things apart. Knowing their weak points is the only way to survive. Chen Yinyin explains she grew up poor, catching scorpions and centipedes to sell. Dealing with pests is in her blood. Lin Feng offers a small comfort, saying the attack is likely just in the coastal regions. If they can escape the city, they might find safety. He asks about his family, and his expression darkens. He tells her his parents disappeared years ago, leaving him alone in this world. He turns back to the beetle, slicing through the ligaments of its back. He lifts the massive crimson armor plate and whispers the command, identification. Lin Feng spent his time experimenting with the system, but he quickly hit a wall. His smartphone was high quality, yet it offered no path for advancement. It wasn't like he could use a phone to fight off a swarm of giant insects. He needed something far more practical. His eyes fell on the crimson back armor he had scavenged. This was the key to staying alive in this nightmare. The crude iron shield he'd made earlier hadn't even registered with the system. But this material? This was different. Despite being 4 centimeters thick and harder than steel, the shell was incredibly light. It felt almost like holding a piece of heavy-duty foam. He struck it with his blade, and it produced a crisp metallic ring. This wasn't just chitin, it was a biological alloy. The system confirmed it. White quality. The evaluation noted it was perfect for crafting a shield. Small smile finally touched his face. This was exactly the defensive edge he needed. But there was a catch. The material was so hard that even a pistol bullet barely left a mark. To turn this into a shield, he would need specialized tools. He remembered seeing a toolbox on the balcony earlier. His brother had been a prepared man, leaving behind a wealth of construction tools. It was one of the reasons Lin Feng had come here. The drill was cordless and fully charged. It was exactly what he needed to begin his work. He wished he could find a chainsaw to use as a melee weapon. For now, however, he had to focus on defense. He handed the saber to Chen Yinyin and gave her a grim task. He told her to dissect the dead insect while he worked. Chen Yinyin hesitated, but seeing Lin Feng's cold focus, she began to cut. She sliced through the membrane beneath the heavy shell. On the balcony, Lin Feng began the grueling process. The material resisted with incredible strength, threatening to snap his bits. 30 minutes passed, and he'd already ruined one bit. Finally, he managed to pierce 10 holes through the armor. He threaded heavy nylon rope through the openings and fastened a leather strap. The red armor shield was finally complete. The system recognized his handiwork immediately. It was a level 2 item with impressive defense stats. He realized that to upgrade it further, he would need to collect more of the same beetle shells. It was a solid start. He returned to the living room to find Zhang Yuro out of the shower. The air was thick with a strange, pungent scent of insect blood. Pinion's search had yielded very little. She found a strange, empty sack, but nothing else of value. Zhang Yuro looked toward the window with growing dread. She knew they weren't safe staying in one place for long. Lin Feng ignored the fear and checked his gear. He swapped in a fresh magazine, preparing for their next move. Asked her about the other car. Her eyes lit up as she remembered the old Land Rover parked outside. She grabbed the keys from the entryway. This was their ticket out of the infested residential complex. The distance to the car was short, but the ground between them was a death trap. They had to be smart about this. They decided they wouldn't leave just yet. They needed to farm more materials and experience before making a run for it. If everyone had a shield, their chances of survival would skyrocket. The women agreed. The university was only a few blocks away. Lin Feng checked his stats. His gun was only a few points away from an upgrade. He needed more targets. He led them back to the door of the neighboring apartment. The plan was simple: lure them out one by one. He took the key from the dead woman's pocket. He braced himself and slowly turned the lock. Through the crack, he spotted a single beetle. It was a level 4 monster, even larger than the last one they'd killed. The creature was busy eating fruit from a table. It seemed these things would scavenge almost anything, but the scent of fresh blood was far more tempting. The beetle dropped the fruit and scurried toward the door. Lin Feng yanked the door open just enough to bait the beast. As it squeezed through, he slammed the door into its side. The impact sent the creature onto its back. It flailed its legs wildly, trying to right itself, but Lin Feng was faster. He fired 3 quick shots into its legs. The beetle screeched as its mobility was stripped away in an instant. He took the saber and hacked off its pincers. The primary threat was now neutralized, leaving the beast helpless. He stepped back and gestured for the women to take over. It was time for them to get their hands dirty. Zhang Yuro stepped forward, her face set with grim resolve. She needed to overcome her fear once and for all. She swung the blade with everything she had. Each strike was fueled by the terror and frustration of the last few hours. Lin Feng watched her, ensuring she didn't get too close. He kept a close eye on the creature's dwindling life bar. The level 4 beetle was tough, but it couldn't withstand the relentless assault. Its life value dropped rapidly. Suddenly, Lin Feng grabbed her arm to stop her. She was breathing hard, her clothes drenched from the exertion. She looked at him, trembling and confused. She asked why they weren't finishing it off. He explained that they needed to study its weaknesses. But in truth, he had a different goal in mind. The pistol was only 2 shots away from an upgrade. He was carefully managing every point of experience. He wasn't just surviving, he was optimizing. Every kill had to serve a greater purpose for their escape. He was a gamer at heart, and he knew a golden opportunity when he saw one. It was time to exploit the system's rules. And that's when he decided to try something that would change everything. The real hunt was just beginning. Lin Feng remembered how pro gamers would farm mobs to level up their gear before a major boss fight. This bug-exploiting mindset was exactly what he needed to survive this nightmare. With a system at his disposal, he knew he had to farm points like crazy. He had been planning this ever since he saw how fast a beetle could heal by eating flesh. He had a specific experiment in mind, and this crippled level 4 beetle was the perfect test subject. It was down to 12 health and posed absolutely no threat. He picked up the limbs he had shot off earlier. One was a pulpy mess from a bullet, while the other was a clean cut from a saber. He placed both limbs near the creature's mouth, curious to see which one it would choose. It felt like a twisted version of a childhood experiment. The results were immediate and fascinating. The beetle greedily ate the limb severed by the blade, but refused to even touch the one shattered by his gun. Theory began to take shape in his mind. It seemed that his pistol's damage did more than just hurt things. It consumed their very essence. He realized that while his gear gained points from damage, he was leveling up through the value consumed from his targets. This was his secret to true power. He fed the creature its own legs and commissary, watching its health bar climb back up to 20. This beetle was going to be his personal point farm. The healing was rapid, much faster than the lower-level beetles he'd fought before. It was regrowing limbs like a lobster, exactly as he had hoped. Once it had healed enough, Lin Feng didn't hesitate. He fired twice, shattering the new limbs and harvesting 2 more upgrade points. With the points secured, he initiated the pistol's upgrade. Then, he tossed the crippled bug onto a nearby corpse to let it feast again. The starving beetle caught the scent of blood and began to feast greedily. It was a gruesome sight that the two women behind him couldn't comprehend. Suddenly, noise from the staircase caught their attention. Other survivors from the building were watching from above, frozen in sheer terror. They watched as the handsome young man from downstairs used a monster to dispose of body. To them, Lin Feng looked like a cold-blooded monster himself. Lin Feng gave them a brief, dismissive glance before ignoring them entirely. He had more important things to worry about than their judgment. Explained that letting the beetle eat the corpse would remove the scent of blood. It was a practical way to keep other monsters away from their door. He also saw it as a chance for them to practice. He handed the saber to Chun Yin, telling her it was time to overcome her fear. Chun Yin took the weapon with a mix of excitement and dread. She waited for the beetle to regrow its legs so she could strike. Lin Feng was curious about what would happen when the saber upgraded. He wondered if it would gain a special attribute, like his pistol's bullet recovery. The level 4 beetle was eating at an incredible rate, its health climbing back up visibly. It was a perfect, endless cycle of growth and destruction. Tested the pistol during its upgrade and found it still functional. He blew off the creature's mandibles, making it easier for the women to handle. He had the two women take turns hacking at the beetle's legs. This ensured the creature stayed grounded while the saber accumulated the necessary points. Soon, the saber was ready. Lin Feng reclaimed the blade and triggered the upgrade, watching as a blinding white light enveloped the steel. The process was fast, taking only seconds. When the light faded, the blade looked sharper and more refined than ever before. He gasped in amazement as he felt the weapon's weight. It had dropped from 6 pounds to less than 4, making it incredibly maneuverable. The damage had jumped by 6 points in a single upgrade. This blade was now powerful enough to cleave through almost any defense. He realized that melee weapons had a massive advantage in scaling. However, he didn't want to waste more time on this specific saber just yet. He went upstairs and brought down another saber for the women to level up. Meanwhile, his own primary weapon was finally finishing its transformation. The pistol's upgrade finally completed, reaching level 3. It was no longer just a common firearm. It was now a fine pistol. Damage increase was modest, but the extra attribute was a game changer. It could now recover 1 bullet every single minute. Before, he had to be careful with every shot, fearing he would run out. Now, he was looking at 60 bullets an hour, an almost infinite supply. He immediately began cycling the magazine to stockpile extra rounds. His bullet anxiety was officially a thing of the past. His strange actions didn't go unnoticed. The two women were watching him with growing suspicion, unable to understand what he was doing. He stood there for a moment, weighing his options. He knew he couldn't keep them in the dark forever if he wanted them to be useful. Lin Feng took a deep breath, looking at their expectant faces. It was time to give them some kind of explanation for the impossible things they were seeing. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. He needed to maintain his authority while giving them enough hope to keep fighting. But as he opened his mouth to speak, the atmosphere in the hallway shifted. The survivors on the stairs were still watching, their presence a constant reminder of the world outside. The secrets of the system were his alone, but the survival of the group depended on what he said next. The silence was heavy with anticipation. Lin Feng paused, feigning a moment of deep thought before he spoke. Under the curious gazes of the two women, he finally began to explain his secret. He told them his pistol was bound to a superpower. By killing the giant bugs, he could increase its power and replenish its ammunition. He knew the weapon would only get stronger from here. Sharing this now was the only way to boost their confidence for the path ahead. The moment he finished, Chun Yin exploded with questions. She wanted to know if this was a spiritual awakening or something linked to the bugs themselves. Lin Feng waved his gun, gesturing for her to quiet down. He admitted he wasn't entirely sure of the source, which was why he needed to experiment. He nudged the red-armored beetle with his foot while glancing at Zhang Yuro. She was older, and this new world was harder for her to grasp. He explained it in terms she might understand, comparing it to the psychic crazes of the past. Then, he asked her about the fever she had that morning. Zhang Yuro remembered the chill she felt after her evening run. She had assumed it was just a cold from not drying off properly. Lin Feng couldn't explain everything yet. He figured he'd have to find someone more knowledgeable once they reached the university. He suggested her regular exercise helped her upgrade after the fever. He asked if she felt any stronger than before. She frowned, swinging her long saber to test the weight. She could definitely feel a change in her body's condition. However, she didn't have a special ability like his. She wondered if her awakening simply wasn't strong enough. Lin Feng argued it was because she hadn't killed a bug yet. The others agreed. Only Lin Feng had actually taken a life so far. This was actually good news. Without these upgrades, ordinary people wouldn't stand a chance against the swarm. Lin Feng felt a secret sense of relief. He planned to have Chen Yinyin test his theory by finishing off the next bug. As the beetle lay there, Lin Feng initiated his own upgrade. A familiar warmth flowed from the gun, circulating through his entire body. The upgrade was complete, bringing him to level 3. His physical attributes had doubled, and he felt a massive surge of power. He was no longer the sickly worker he once was. Muscle definition was now visible on his frame, replacing his previous scrawny appearance. The increase in spirit and physique allowed him to control the recoil perfectly. His accuracy and fire rate had risen significantly. He almost wanted to kiss the weapon in his hand. Every boy dreams of such power, and he had achieved it in the most perfect way. Suppressing his excitement, he ejected the magazine. He carefully tucked the freshly replenished bullets in his pocket for later. Meanwhile, the beetle had finished devouring the corpse. It hadn't even spared the bones, crushing everything with its terrifying mandibles. Whenever its life value rose, Lin Feng had Chen Yinyin hack off its limbs. They were farming the creature to maximize their gains. By the time it finished its meal, the beetle was on the brink of death. It was time for the final blow. Lin Feng upgraded Chen Yinyin's saber and handed it back. He told her to aim for the head and end it. She struggled to lift the heavy blade, using every ounce of her strength. Then, she brought it down in a vicious, desperate chop. The level 2 blade was incredibly sharp. It severed the beetle's head instantly, finally putting the creature out of its misery. Suddenly, Chen Yinyin felt her entire body grow hot. Sweat began to pour from her as her breathing became rapid and deep. Lin Feng watched as she completed her upgrade in minutes. Her attributes had jumped, confirming his theory about killing the bugs. This was clearly the path for normal people. It was faster than a natural awakening and didn't cause a debilitating fever. In a world swarming with monsters, speed was everything. He knew he had to get both women leveled up if they were to survive. He walked over and patted her shoulder, asking how she felt. She nodded vigorously, her face alight with newfound power. She described a wave of heat moving through her. Now, the heavy long saber felt as light as a feather in her hands. Suddenly, a faint, pleasant scent filled the air. Chen Yinyin leaned in and planted a quick kiss on his cheek before shrinking back. Lin Feng rolled his eyes, seeing through her innocent act. He told her not to thank him, as he was just using her as an experiment. He ignored her pout and handed the saber to Zhang Yuro. It was time to discuss their new strategy for survival. He explained that since they could grow stronger by killing, they needed to clear the apartment complex first. It was their best chance to prepare. University would be even more dangerous, so they needed every advantage. He began carving the back armor off the dead beetle. The women watched him, their expressions thoughtful. They both agreed and followed him back upstairs to prepare their gear. He planned to fashion the armor into shields. He also needed to assign clear roles to ensure their team worked like a machine. His pistol was his strongest asset, but reloading was a major weakness. He had 24 rounds ready, but he needed more. Chen Yinyin immediately volunteered to be his reloader. She claimed her factory experience made her perfect for the repetitive, high-speed task. Lin Feng let her try, and he was impressed by her speed. She could fill a 12-round magazine in just 15 seconds. Half an hour later, they were ready. They were armed with a level 3 pistol, 2 shields, and 2 level 2 sabers. This setup wouldn't stop a swarm, but it was enough for small groups. They would use the building's narrow terrain to their advantage. He reached the door of apartment 201. Lin Feng glanced back one last time to check on his team. Zhang Yuro held the shield and saber, her physique making her the perfect vanguard. Chen Yinyin stood behind Lin Feng, ready to reload. Lin Feng took a deep breath and inserted the key. He asked them if they were ready for what was behind the door. The two women nodded together, their expressions grim. There was no turning back now. This would be their first real test as a team. As the door creaked open, the hunt finally began. The door to room 201 creaked open, revealing a messy, silent living room. To Lin Feng's relief, there wasn't a single red-armored beetle in sight. He stepped inside, hauling a massive shield crafted from the shell of a level 4 monster. It was a heavy barrier, wide enough to block an entire doorway. Lin Feng took the lead, followed closely by Zhang Yuro. He scanned every corner and checked the ceiling for hidden threats. Once they confirmed the area was clear, the trio moved toward the balcony. They positioned themselves at the sliding doors, creating a perfect choke point. Then, Lin Feng began banging loudly on his shield. The metallic echoes rang through the complex, acting as a dinner bell for the predators below. It didn't take long for the insects to respond. Drawn by the noise and the scent of blood, they began to scramble up the building's exterior. The first beetle lunged directly at the group, but it slammed fruitlessly against Lin Feng's massive shield. This was exactly what he wanted. A hail of bullets greeted the creature. Lin Feng fired 3 precise shots, severing its limbs and leaving it twitching on the ground. Zhang Yuro stepped forward to deliver the final blow. Killing these creatures was the only way for her to gain the points she needed to level up. But after the kill, she felt nothing. To her surprise, the expected surge of power didn't come. Lin Feng told her not to worry. He guessed that higher levels simply required more kills to trigger an upgrade. The gunshots had echoed far and wide. Soon, 2 more giant insects scrambled over the railing at the same time. Lin Feng didn't give them a chance to crawl closer. He emptied his magazine, shredding their legs and sending them crashing to the floor. A Euro moved in to finish them off. Chun Yin worked quickly to reload the empty magazines. They were becoming a well-oiled machine. With the next kill, the familiar glow returned. Zhang Yuro had successfully reached level 2. Lin Feng checked her stats and saw a massive 50% boost. Her physique and spirit were climbing at an incredible rate. Change was obvious from the eager way she moved. She was starting to realize just how powerful she could become. Lin Feng called out a warning, telling her to step back. He didn't want her facing a full-strength beetle while she was still learning. Besides, if she stood in the way, he couldn't aim. He needed a clear line of fire for the next wave. Next wave came fast. Lin Feng expertly targeted their heads and abdomens, his trigger finger never slowing down. After 24 bullets, 5 more insects lay dead. 7 corpses now cluttered the balcony, leaving barely any room to move. Fortunately, these things were low to the ground. Even piled up, they hadn't completely blocked their exit yet. They reloaded and waited, but the flow of monsters finally stopped. Silence returned to the apartment complex. Lin Feng cautiously advanced to the edge. He peeked out, keeping his profile low against the building's exterior. The beetles that had gathered downstairs were mostly gone. But then, the quiet was shattered by a different kind of noise. People in the surrounding buildings were opening their windows. They were screaming for help, their voices echoing through the courtyard. Lin Feng was speechless. These people were essentially shouting for the monsters to come and eat them. They had no weapons and no gear, yet they dared to draw attention to themselves. It was pure idiocy. The only reason they weren't dead yet was their location. Being near the suburbs meant the initial swarm density was relatively low, but even that didn't save the most reckless ones. Beetles quickly targeted the neighbors on the lower floors, their screams ending in sudden silence. The remaining survivors finally realized the danger and slammed their windows shut. But the damage was already done. Lin Feng just shook his head. People accustomed to peace had no sense of crisis, even when the world was ending around them. This swarm had hit every continent on the planet. The urban centers had likely fallen hours ago, leaving everyone to fend for themselves. He saw a few smart ones escaping in their cars, but he didn't hold out much hope for them. The roads were likely death traps. Since the area was clear for now, Lin Feng told the women to finish off the remaining insects. It was time for more upgrades. Zhang Yuro hesitated, offering her saber to Lin Feng. She seemed worried that he was letting her take all the kills. He just smiled and shook his head. He told her his gun would get the job done, just as well. He explained his theory on the upgrade progression. To hit level 3, he calculated she would need exactly 3 more kills. Following his instructions, she finished off the next 2 beetles. She moved with more confidence now, her strikes becoming more precise. Suddenly, her entire body began to glow and radiate heat. This upgrade was far more intense than the last one. For a few dozen seconds, she was consumed by a searing internal heat. Then, as quickly as it started, the sensation dissipated. She had successfully reached level 3. Her stats were now nearly as high as Lin Feng's, making her a formidable ally. Now it was Chun Yinyan's turn to complete her second upgrade. The group was growing stronger with every passing minute. Finally, Lin Feng looked at his own weapon. With enough points accumulated, he took a deep breath and issued the command to upgrade his pistol to level 4. Chun Yinyan had barely finished off the 2 red-armored beetles when her body began to burn. A warm, surging current flooded her veins, marking her second evolution in a single day. Lin Feng watched the transformation with a keen eye. He pulled up her stats, curious to see how she was progressing compared to his own journey. Her attributes were surprisingly high, even better than his own when he had reached level 2. Killing those beetles in rapid succession had given her a massive experience boost. The 2 women now stronger, Lin Feng turned his attention to the final beetle. It was clinging to life, a perfect opportunity to distribute some easy experience. He let Zhang Yuro deliver the killing blow. He wasn't about to let a single scrap of power go to waste in this new, brutal world. As the dust settled, Chun Yinyan stood quietly, feeling the newfound strength in her limbs. She knew exactly where she stood in this group. She realized she was an outsider, nowhere near as close to Lin Feng as his sister-in-law was. If she wanted to survive, she had to prove she was indispensable. She didn't just want to be his friend. She needed to be more. Lin Feng had risked his life for Euro, but he wouldn't do the same for her. Not yet. The immediate area around Building 6 was finally clear. Only a dozen beetles remained scattered across the complex, far enough away to be ignored for now. Lin Feng decided to call it a day. His marksmanship was lethal at close range, but at 30 meters, he was just wasting precious bullets on thick shells. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a crushing wave of fatigue. They were all in a declining state and desperately needed to rest. Before leaving, Lin Feng began the grim task of harvesting the spoils. He skillfully carved the crimson back armor from the fallen monsters. Chun Yinyan was quick to help, eager to show her value. She followed his lead, gathering the materials that would soon become their protection. Zhang Yuro frowned at the stench rising from the carcasses. She worried that the smell would only bring more monsters to their doorstep. Lin Feng realized he'd made a small tactical error by killing them all too quickly. These corpses could have been used as live bait to farm even more points. With the light fading and their energy spent, it wasn't the time for more risks. He decided to leave the remains exactly where they were. He viewed the room as a baited fishing spot. Perhaps they would return after dinner to find a pleasant surprise waiting for them. They had collected 7 pieces in total, including 2 massive shields from the level 4 beetles. Thanks to her new physique, Chun Yinyan carried the 50-pound load effortlessly. Leaving the key in the lock for a quick return, they retreated from the scene of the slaughter. It was time to head back to the safety of the 3rd floor. Entering room 302 felt like stepping back into another life. The sunset cast a warm glow, a stark contrast to the nightmare they had just survived. They dropped their gear and collapsed onto the sofa, too drained to even speak. The weight of the day was finally catching up to them. Zhang Yuro was the first to move, driven by the need to provide. With the power out, she used a small portable stove to start preparing a meal before the food spoiled. Lin Feng emerged from his daze as a mental notification pinged. He drew his pistol, sensing something had changed within the weapon itself. The pistol had reached level 4. It now boasted a range of 200 meters and a terrifying new feature, the spatial magazine. Realization hit him like a lightning bolt, making him leap from his seat. He was so energized that he nearly gave Chun Yinyan a heart attack. Chun Yinyan stammered in panic, thinking a bug had broken in. She quickly hid her attempt to sneak closer to him while he was resting. Lin Feng just laughed, an uncontrollable smile on his lips. He told her she wouldn't have to worry about reloading for him ever again. Joked that the gun had finally grown up and learned to reload itself. With 600 reserve rounds in a spatial magazine, his greatest weakness was gone. He realized that every 3 levels marked a massive jump in power. It explained why the level 4 beetles were so much more dangerous than the others. It was time for his own breakthrough. He initiated the synchronized upgrade, eager to see what kind of monster he would become at level 4. As he prepared to work on the armor, a wave of heat surged through him. This sensation was far more intense than any of his previous level-ups. The power released by the legendary pistol was overwhelming. It flooded his body, searching for a place to settle as he broke through his limits. On a sudden whim, he guided the excess energy toward his eyes. He could feel the temperature of his eyeballs rising, a searing heat building behind his lids. It felt like a heated mask was being pressed against his face. Tears stained with dark blood fell as his vision was forcibly rewritten by the system. When he finally opened his eyes, the world had changed. It was like upgrading from a blurry old screen to a crystal-clear, high-definition display. His vision was now superhuman. He could see dust motes floating in the air and the tiny details of apartments over 30 meters away. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his trembling hands. This new power was exactly what he needed to dominate the battlefield. His eyes were cured of every defect he'd ever had. In their place was a powerful area scan and dynamic tracking ability that felt like a built-in scope. He could now lock onto a target the size of a ping-pong ball from 50 meters away. Even human figures half a kilometer off were no longer hidden from him. Combined with his legendary pistol, his effective range had exploded. He could now pick off the remaining beetles in the complex without ever leaving his balcony. His new attributes appeared before him, showing a massive leap in his physical and mental capacity. He had truly transcended the limits of a normal human. The crowning achievement was his new ability, Hawkeye. It was an over-level skill that started at level 10, a testament to the power of his evolution. The smell of dinner wafted from the kitchen, grounding him back in reality. Despite the chaos outside, they were having a moment of peace. Chun Yin watched him, sensing the shift in his aura. He felt different, sharper, more predatory, like a hunter who had finally found his true sight. Lin Feng sat down to eat, his mind already racing with plans for the next day. With his new eyes, the residential complex was no longer a maze of death. As they ate, the world outside fell into a deep, terrifying silence. But inside room 302, the survivors were stronger than they had ever been. The legendary pistol sat within arm's reach, a silent guardian with a bottomless magazine. The ammunition problem was a thing of the past. He looked at the two women, realizing the weight of his responsibility. He was the one who would lead them through this apocalypse, one shot at a time. The breakthrough to level 4 had changed everything. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was evolving into something the world had never seen. The night was just beginning, and for the first time, Lin Feng could see perfectly in the dark. The hunt was about to become much more interesting. Reaching level 4 brought a surge of power, boosting Lin Feng's physique and life value significantly. But it was his spirit stat that saw the most unexpected jump. That extra boost wasn't a fluke. It was the direct result of his brand new overlevel ability. Next to the skill name sat a striking level 10 tag. Obtaining a high-tier ability this early was a massive game changer. It didn't directly increase his raw physical strength. It fixed his biggest weakness. He finally had the support skills to match his legendary weapon. With Hawkeye, Lin Feng essentially gained a natural 4x zoom. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a master sharpshooter. Anything within 200 meters was now a guaranteed kill. He had successfully maximized the potential of his most powerful asset. Nearby, Chun Yin watched him with a mix of awe and lingering terror. She remembered the sight of his eyes bleeding just moments before. She asked if he was okay or if he needed medicine. The sight of blood leaking from his eyes had clearly shaken her to the core. Lin Feng didn't waste words, simply taking the wipes to clean the dried blood from his face. When he finally looked up, his gaze was different. His pupils constricted with such intensity that Chun Yin felt like she was being stared down by a lethal beast. Her heart skipped a beat in pure instinctual fear. He assured her he was fine, explaining that the blood was just impurities being purged. His vision was now clearer than it had ever been in his life. He turned his attention back to his craft, finishing another small red armor shield. This one was specifically designed for Chun Yin-yen. With 3 shields now ready, he decided to stop for the day. His tools were reaching their limits, and the electric drill was nearly dead. It was a shame he couldn't upgrade his auxiliary tools yet. If he could, he would have turned his apartment into a literal fortress. Instead, he focused on strengthening what he already had. He began fusing the remaining pieces of armor into his own level 3 shield. Just like a person, the gear required specific amounts of materials to break through. 3 pieces of back armor were the key to the next level. The shield flashed brilliantly, shrinking into a compact form about the size of a breastplate. It was sleek, reinforced, and pulsing with power. The new stats were impressive, but it was the shield armor form that caught his eye. It promised a transformation he hadn't seen before. Its default form, it attached to his back, freeing up his hands. It acted as a passive shell, protecting him from any cowardly attacks from behind. But the shield armor form had a steep cost, requiring a piece of back armor for every hour of use. He suspected it would cover his entire body. He preloaded the remaining materials into the shield, bringing it to the brink of another upgrade. He decided to save the transformation for a real fight. The gentle squeeze, the shield expanded back to its massive original size. Despite its bulk, it weighed only a few pounds, feeling as light as a feather. The initial panic he felt when the swarm arrived was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating confidence. He was actually starting to look forward to the hunt. A dead-end office job was nothing compared to the thrill of this apocalypse. As a veteran gamer, the rush of leveling up was becoming addictive. Chun Yin-yen watched him work in stunned silence, her mind finally going numb from the constant shocks. At this point, she wouldn't even be surprised if he pulled a bomb out of thin air. She knew her place and kept her questions to herself. Building goodwill meant doing more and talking less, a habit she was quickly mastering. The silence was broken by Zhang Yuro, who announced that dinner was finally ready. The smell of home-cooked food filled the small apartment. She didn't have rice, but she had managed to boil frozen dumplings and whip up some savory meat dishes. To the starving survivors, it looked like a feast. Lin Feng tore through the meal, finishing 30 dumplings and most of the side dishes by himself. He leaned back, letting out a long, contented burp. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Zhang Yuro asked the question on everyone's mind. Were they leaving tonight? Lin Feng shook his head. Even with his enhanced vision, the night was far too dangerous to navigate. The rescue team wouldn't arrive until 8 the next morning. Since the university was only a 10-minute drive away, they had time to wait. Rest was their top priority. They needed to recover their strength to face whatever horrors the morning would bring. But with the meal over, a new problem emerged. The water shortage meant they couldn't wash the dishes, let alone themselves. After a day of fighting and the heat of leveling up, they were all covered in sweat and grime. The sticky feeling was becoming unbearable for the women. They had scavenged some tap water from downstairs, but it wasn't enough for everyone to have a proper bath. Lin Feng offered to let the women go first, but Zhang Yuro insisted that he go first. As the core of the team, his physical condition was the most important factor for their survival. Lin Feng sat alone in the bathroom, the simple bucket and towel bringing back a flood of memories from his childhood. He remembered his father, Lin Yu, being the one who always looked after him. His mother was always busy with her work at the university. The quiet moment of reflection was rare in this chaotic new world. He stared at the water, feeling the weight of the past. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the sound of a key turning in the lock. The bathroom door swung open unexpectedly. He froze, looking back with wide eyes as Zhang Yuro stepped inside. He stammered, pointing out that he hadn't finished yet. She had changed into a thin yoga top and short pants, revealing her fair skin and athletic figure. She walked toward him with a calm, deliberate pace. She brushed a lock of hair behind her ear, her eyes soft and inviting. She told him she had brought a new towel. She teased him, asking if he was really used to washing with just a bucket. She knew he couldn't reach his own back. Without waiting for an answer, she shut the door behind her and turned the lock. She was staying to help him, whether he was ready or not. Lin Feng stood there, frozen and naked, feeling the heat rise to his face. But the sight of sister-in-law Yuro's playful smile sent a different kind of thrill through him. He turned away quickly, stammering a quiet response while his heart raced. Yuro didn't back down. She stepped closer, a triumphant look in her eyes. She knelt behind him, picking up a soapy towel to gently scrub his back. The touch of her soft skin against his sent a jolt of electricity through his body. It was the first time he'd ever been this close to a woman. It felt like a fantasy suddenly turning into a vivid, breathing reality. Her warm breath tickled his ear as she leaned in, smelling as sweet as orchids. She whispered a question that made his world stop. Did he like her? A tremor shook him, and unable to find words, he simply nodded. Her soft laughter echoed against his skin as she confessed she felt the same. She admitted her husband hadn't touched her in years, and her nightly dinners were a silent invitation. The situation was moving much faster than Lin Feng ever expected. He had planned to take things slow, but his widowed sister-in-law was already making her move. He felt a mix of shock and pure delight. Suddenly, she wrapped her arms around him, her voice dripping with temptation. She asked him exactly how he planned to show his affection. Lin Feng didn't hesitate any longer, turning to meet her lips with his own. They shared a long, deep embrace as the steam filled the room. An hour later, Lin Feng stepped out feeling like a new man. Yuro followed behind, blushing and wrapped tightly in a white towel. He grabbed a bucket of water and drank greedily to quench his thirst. That's when he noticed Chun Yinyin rising from the sofa, watching him with a smirk. She didn't say a word, simply unzipping her jacket and stepping out her clothes. It was finally her turn to wash away the day's grime. Standing there in just her underwear, her tall, athletic figure was breathtaking. Her legs seemed to go on forever, moving with the grace of a runway model. Lin Feng couldn't look away, mesmerized by her perfect proportions. Even if she lacked Yuro's curves, her youthful beauty was undeniable. Chun Yinyin noticed his gaze and felt her confidence surge. She walked up to him, mocking him for how quickly he'd moved on from his brother's death. Lin Feng cleared his throat, trying to maintain a serious expression. He claimed he was simply fulfilling his promise to take care of his brother's wife. Chun Yinyin burst out laughing, leaning her weight against his chest. She playfully asked if he wanted to take care of his second sister-in-law too. He rolled his eyes and dodged her, telling her she smelled like sweat. He pointed toward the bathroom, warning her there was only enough water for one person. Without looking back, he headed toward the bedroom where Yuro was waiting. Chun Yinyin huffed in frustration, stomping her foot as he left. She stared at herself in the bathroom mirror, comparing her youthful face to Yuro's. She was determined to win him over, convinced she had a chance. By the time she finished her shower, the world outside was swallowed by darkness. She put on her white uniform shirt and collapsed onto the sofa. She put on her headphones to block out the world, trying to find some comfort. From the next room, the faint sound of muffled sobbing reached her ears. She assumed Yuro was finally mourning her husband and felt a pang of empathy. Time ticked by slowly as the silence of midnight took over. In the bedroom, the sobbing eventually turned into heavy snoring. Chun Yinyin removed her headphones, searching for a power bank in the dim light. Meanwhile, on the 6th floor, the other survivors were reaching their breaking point. They were starving, thirsty, and terrified of the freezing wind. A middle-aged woman complained that they couldn't just sit there and die. An old veteran named Weigwa looked on with hollow, sorrowful eyes. He warned them that the news was true. Rescue wasn't coming. If the bugs had taken the sea, the world's navies were already gone. He estimated that only a fraction of the army would ever reach their city. They were truly on their own in this nightmare. The middle-aged woman nodded, realizing they had to save themselves. They couldn't afford to wait for a miracle that wasn't coming. A young woman with glasses shared what she had overheard from the floor below. She had seen Lin Feng's group and heard their secrets. She explained that killing the giant bugs was the key to gaining power. The more you killed, the stronger you became. She pointed out the red shields they carried, harvested from the monsters' bodies. With those, they wouldn't have to fear the insects anymore. It was clear that Lin Feng's group wouldn't help them escape. They were only focused on their own survival and strength. The young woman noted that they had killed at least 5 bugs that day. The middle-aged woman's eyes lit up with a greedy realization. There were only 3 people in Lin Feng's group but 5 bugs were killed. That meant there were extra carapaces left behind in room 201. She rallied the others, brandishing a kitchen knife she'd brought from home. She argued that 6 of them were enough to scavenge the remains. They had to move while the others were asleep to get the best scraps. If they waited until morning, there would be nothing left for them. The group shared a desperate look and nodded in silent agreement. They began their quiet descent down the dark stairwell. Back in the apartment, Chun Yin was still looking for a way to charge her phone. Suddenly, a series of blood-curdling screams echoed from below. Even through the thick walls, the sounds were shrill and full of agony. She immediately realized the survivors from upstairs had made a move. Panic flared in her chest as she realized they must have run into the bugs. She quickly threw on her clothes and grabbed her gear. With her shield and saber in hand, she prepared to head out into the hall. She thought she might be able to use the chaos to kill more monsters. But as she reached for the door, a low, cold voice stopped her. Zhang Yuro was standing in the bedroom doorway, watching her. Yuro asked her if she was really going to risk her life for strangers. Chun Yin froze, a cold sweat breaking out across her back. She lowered her head like a scolded child, admitting she shouldn't have acted alone. She explained her plan to use the survivors as bait. Yuro didn't answer, instead walking toward the balcony in the moonlight. Her sheer nightgown revealed her graceful silhouette against the night sky. Her expression was eerily calm, showing no concern for the dying people outside. Chun Yin followed her, feeling like her fate was now tied to this woman. Yuro lit a slim cigarette, the smoke curling into the air. She offered one to Chun Yin, who quickly declined in a nervous stutter. Yuro looked down at the street, where her husband's body lay mangled by beetles. She asked Chun Yin how long she had really been with him. Chun Yin panicked, desperately trying to explain their professional relationship. She swore that nothing sexual had ever happened between them. Yuro flicked her ash, cutting her off with a chilling calmness. She revealed that she already knew the truth about her husband's condition. She looked at Chun Yin with a meaningful smile and exhaled a cloud of smoke. She confessed that he couldn't get it up because she was the one who caused it. Chun Yin's pupils contracted as a wave of terror washed over her. The screams outside were nothing compared to the realization of who Yuro really was. Chun Yin felt a heavy weight in her chest as the air turned cold. Every word from the woman standing before her felt like a suffocating trap. She realized that Zhang Yuro wasn't the person she thought she was. This was the terrifying truth of a woman with 2 faces. Stunned into silence, Chun struggled to find her voice. Finally, she gathered the courage to ask the question burning in her mind. She asked if Yuro was the one responsible for what happened to General Manager Lin. The moment the words left her mouth, she regretted her stupidity. Yuro didn't flinch or deny it. Instead, a calm smile spread across her face as she admitted to everything. She confessed that the plan had actually started 6 years ago. Chin's gossip-hungry heart couldn't help but ask if he had been cheating back then. Yuro looked down at the mangled corpse with chilling indifference. She explained it wasn't about a mistress, but the realization that he never loved her. He only wanted her father's resources to climb the social ladder. To him, she was just a stepping stone to power. So, 6 years ago, she began adding a slow poison to his food every single day. Eventually, the powerful man became completely useless. While he withered, Yuro worked on herself, perfecting her body and face. She wanted him to spend the rest of his life in regret. It was a cruel torture, making him desire a woman he could never touch. They lived as polite strangers, masking a deep, dark resentment. He surrounded himself with young women just to hide his shame from his friends. But in reality, he had lost his dignity long ago. Yuro opened the window and flicked her cigarette onto the bloody remains. Chun watched her, paralyzed by the sight of a cold-blooded killer. The casual way Yuro spoke about murder was more terrifying than the act itself. It was hard to believe this was the same gentle woman from that morning. Chun realized that Lin's gentlemanly restraint wasn't out of respect. It was a pathetic secret hidden behind a mask of professionalism. A new fear gripped Chun as she thought of Lin Feng sleeping nearby. She demanded to know what Yuro planned for him. Yuro's cold eyes suddenly softened with a warm, genuine light. She described Lin Feng as a good man who knew how to control his passions. Unlike other men, He had looked at her with respect even when they were alone. Because of that, she had given herself to him completely. Then, she dropped a bombshell that left Chun reeling. She told Chun that she was giving Lin Feng to her. Confused and panicked, Chun asked if Yuro was planning to abandon him. Yuro explained that a rescue helicopter was on its way. The flight was for elite professors, and the seats were already full. Yuro's father had only been able to secure one single spot for her. Hope drained from Chun as she realized she was being left behind. She asked if Lin Feng knew about the departure. Yuro confirmed that he knew and had made his choice. He didn't want to return to a boring, mundane life. Lin Feng preferred the thrill of the apocalypse and the chance to grow stronger. He saw the cataclysm as a turning point for all of humanity. Yuro believed with all her heart that he would become the strongest person in history. Her foresight was profound, far beyond that of a simple housewife. Inside, realizing the massive gap in their worldviews. But she still didn't understand why she was being chosen as his guardian. Yuro explained that she needed to help her father and secure resources for Lin Feng's future. Staying by his side now would only hold him back. She needed a woman to guide him and protect him from being deceived. She looked at Chun, acknowledging her beauty as a former campus belle. Yuro noted that Chun had the experience to see through manipulative women. She needed someone who could spot a rotten person from a mile away. She reminded Chun that staying with Lin Feng was a blessing compared to escaping with nothing. This was her chance at a better life in a dying world. Yuro walked closer, looking at the nervous young woman with a touch of envy. She then told Chun to go rest, taking the next watch herself. As Chun hurried away, Yuro called out one last promise. She vowed to take care of Chun's family back home if she stayed loyal to Lin Feng. Chun stumbled, the weight of the favor feeling more like a threat. She forced a smile and thanked her before disappearing into the dark. Alone in the moonlight, Yuro gently touched her abdomen. She crushed her cigarette pack and threw it out the window, deciding to quit for good. Next morning arrived with the pale light of dawn. Lin Feng woke up feeling refreshed and full of energy. The delicious scent of meat porridge drifted from the kitchen. Yuro had spent hours preparing a final meal for them. Lin Feng walked into the kitchen and wrapped his arms around her waist. He whispered that Chan was still asleep and she should rest too. Yuro teased him, asking if he just wanted her to come back to bed. She told him to stop fooling around and focus on the journey ahead. She warned him not to get distracted by other women at the university. Lin Feng took her hand, his expression turning deeply sincere. He promised that he would never forget her, no matter what happened. She was his first, and she would always hold that place in his heart. Yuro snorted playfully, but a girlish blush crept onto her cheeks. They shared a long, passionate kiss that felt like a final goodbye. She pulled away and gently hit his chest, telling him not to speak of death. The most important thing was for him to come back to her alive. She sent him off to wash up while she went awake Chin Yin Yin. The atmosphere was heavy with the weight of their impending separation. Half an hour later, the three of them sat down for their final breakfast together. Lin Feng had no idea about the dark secrets shared last night. Chin packed her bags, tucking away the professional clothes she had worn when this all began. They gathered the remaining supplies for the unknown. They armed themselves with shields, blades, and guns, ready to face the monsters. Lin Feng checked his legendary pistol, ensuring it was fully loaded. With a determined look, he led the way toward the door. It was 5:30 a.m., and it was time to leave. Zhang Yuro grabbed the car keys and followed Lin Feng out. The moment they stepped into the stairwell, the suffocating stench of blood hit them. Everywhere they looked, the walls and steps were drenched in dark, wet crimson. Lin Feng knew he couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. He immediately activated the upgrade reserve for his red armor shield. A blinding white light flared from his hand, illuminating the dark corridor. The shield began to transform, its modules shifting like clockwork. It reconfigured itself into a sleek suit of armor that wrapped around his entire body. From his head down to his fingertips, he was perfectly encased in the protective plating. It moved with him effortlessly, feeling more like a second skin than heavy metal. A glowing countdown appeared on his HUD, showing 59 minutes of active time. He didn't have a second to waste on explanations. Gripping his pistol, he charged up the stairs toward the source of the blood. Gunshots echoed through the building as he engaged the hidden threats. Legendary pistol made short work of the two beetles lurking above. He quickly harvested their back armor, which vanished into his storage reserve. With the floor cleared, he led the women back down. But the danger wasn't over yet. More monsters were waiting below. In front of room 201, 5 more beetles were feasting on the remains of survivors. Lin Feng didn't give them a chance to react. Finished them off with a series of clean, clinical shots. The hallway fell silent as the last of the insects collapsed. He took Zhang Yuro's shield and began the upgrade process. After absorbing the fresh materials, the device pulsed with new power. Her level 2 shield successfully reached level 4. He quickly explained how she could now switch it into the same armor form he wore. Zhang Yuro's eyes were filled with love and pride for her man. Meanwhile, Chun Yinyan watched with a mix of envy and desperate anticipation. The ability to wear the shield as armor was a game-changer. It meant they could fight with both hands free while remaining completely protected. They reached the ground floor, where 2 more beetles were scratching at the door. They were drawn by the scent of blood, but they weren't smart enough to find another way in. Lin Feng opened the door and ended them instantly. He harvested their armor as well, building up a reserve for Euro. He realized that these items only function this way in his hands. Without his system, others would be helpless even if they had the gear. Stepping outside, they saw Lin Yoji's expensive Mercedes. But the man himself was gone, reduced to nothing but a dark stain on the pavement. Lin Feng expected Zhang Yuro to linger, but she didn't even glance at the remains. She walked straight to the Land Rover and climbed into the driver's seat. Zhang Yuro started the engine with practiced ease. In the back, Chun Yinyan sat surrounded by bags of food and gear, her face pale. Lin Feng took one final look at the place he had called home for years. He knew that this departure was a final farewell to his old life. He settled into the passenger seat and nodded. Zhang Yuro released the brake, and they began to pull away from the complex. He checked his stats. The recent kills had netted him a massive amount of points. He now had enough to level up his equipment twice in a row. As they hit the highway, Lin Feng rolled down the window. He watched the roadside for any movement, searching for his next target. The road ahead led toward University City, a place full of memories for him. But today, those memories felt like they belonged to a different person. He thought of his mother, He Yiwen, a woman who lived for her research and nothing else. She had never cared for his future, never even tutored him as a child. He used to resent her coldness, but he had finally let that go. Now, he had a new family to protect, and a woman who truly cared for him. The highway was a graveyard of abandoned vehicles. Zhang Yuro navigated the obstacles with the skill of an experienced driver. She suggested they needed to find a powerful truck. A sedan was simply too small to carry the supplies they would need to survive. She explained that a heavy truck could smash through a swarm's encirclement. It would also mean fewer stops for fuel, which was becoming a death trap. The coastal cities were falling, and a mass migration was beginning. Millions of people would soon be fighting over the same scarce resources inland. Lin Feng understood the gravity of her words. If they didn't gather everything they could now, they would starve later. But he didn't just want to flee, he wanted to hunt. Every insect he killed was another step toward becoming invincible. They passed a horrific crash where a massive truck had flattened several sedans. The raw power of the heavy vehicle was undeniable. Problem was that most heavy trucks required a manual license he didn't have. He wondered if he could even handle such a beast. Zhang Yuro offered a different solution, a high-end RV. They were automatic, comfortable, and could be turned into a mobile fortress. Lin Feng's eyes lit up at the idea. If they modified an RV with his shields, it would be the perfect mobile safe house. He finally reached the outskirts of University City. The streets were lined with the ghosts of student life, internet cafes, and late-night diners. He remembered the nights he spent grinding for levels in video games. Now, that digital fantasy had become a brutal, bloody reality. Just then, his pistol finished its upgrade to level 5. The weapon felt heavier, humming with a new, lethal energy. Its damage had increased significantly, and its magazine capacity had expanded. It was the edge he needed for the battles to come. He didn't stop there. He immediately began his own synchronized upgrade. He needed his body to keep pace with his growing arsenal. As they drove deeper into the city, the silence felt heavy and wrong. He could sense eyes watching them from the dark corners of the buildings. Dong Yuro felt it too, her grip tightening on the wheel. The air was thick with the scent of something much worse than the beetles. University City was a sprawling maze, and it was likely crawling with monsters. To get the supplies they needed, they would have to enter the heart of the hive. He checked his ammo one last time, his expression hardening. He knew that a brutal and bloody battle was waiting for them just around the corner. Before the sun set, he had to become even stronger. The real nightmare was about to begin.